able to do the reading that we had assigned for today, which was the first 2 chapters of the Joy Luck Club. Before we start with our lesson, does anyone want to start us off with initial thoughts? So how did you feel when you were reading this?
It was interesting, but sometimes it was hard to understand what was going on.
Yeah, that's really fair. Hopefully today we'll be able to unpack some of the things that were hard to understand. So sometimes authors, when they're writing, they don't always explain everything very clearly, so they don't spell every single thing out, which is why it's sometimes hard to understand what they're saying. But they leave us clues within the text for us to be able to guess what they're trying to say. So these are called text clues. And it's kind of like being a detective when you're looking for evidence through the text, you're looking for clues, and you can make guesses about what the author might actually mean. And another word we're going to be talking about today is an inference. An inference is a type of educated guess that's based on the text clues that you find. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone understand what an inference is? Okay, great. So first, we're going to use these text clues and make inferences about some characters that we read about today. But we'll start off with an activity where we all pair up, and one person has to put themselves in the shoes of Jing Mei, and the other person will be Jing Mei's mother. And I want you both to have a conversation between yourselves where you're pretending to be the character that you're assigned, and try and be as realistic as possible. So would these characters laugh? Would they fight? Would they argue? And then at the end, we'll try, based off of the conversation, to come up with some personality traits. Okay, we can all come back together now. So does anyone want to share any personality traits that they came up with using the conversation and the text clues? Yeah, go ahead.
She was a proud person?
Yeah, that's a great point. Why do you say that? Yeah, definitely. That's a really great example of using a text clue to make a guess or an inference about what this character might be like. Is everyone getting a good sense of what it means to use text clues to make inferences? Does anyone have any questions? Okay, great. So now we know how to be detectives and use text clues. Let's use these clues to figure out details of the story. So, for example, let's look at this particular section when Jing Mei and her mother are talking about the babies. Can I have a volunteer to read out this passage?
I can read it.
Go ahead.
By the time I arrived in Chongqing.
Really good job, thank you. So in this short passage, we're kind of left wondering, what happened to these babies? The author isn't telling us clearly, but there are some clues within the text that might help us figure it out. Did anyone notice a clue that they can point to within this passage? Go ahead. And sometimes when there's like a big theme that's running through a long book, it's helpful to annotate the text. Does anyone know what the word annotate means?
Doesn't it mean like taking notes?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it means. Annotating basically means taking notes. And we can use annotations when we're trying to analyze the text and make inferences from text clues. And it's easier to annotate when you have a goal in mind for what you want to get out of the story. So for example, if I asked you to reread the first chapter of the Joy Luck Club and think about race, you might mark out or annotate areas that allude to or give reference to racial identity, right? So let's do an example of this together. Would anyone like to give an example of a word that they read in this section of the Joy Luck Club that they didn't know the meaning of?
Meager.
Okay, meager. So now let's use this chant that I have as a trick to try and figure out what this word means. So the chant I have for you today is bag tea. It's like a tea bag, so it's easy to remember. So B stands for look before the word, and A stands for look after the word. So use what clues you can see before and after the word to create a context for the word and figure out what the word might be in that context. And then G stands for make a guess for what that word could mean. And even if you don't guess completely right, you might have an approximate idea of what the word could mean. And later you can try and look it up. And then lastly, try out the meaning in the space of the word. So see if your guess makes sense in the same spot as where the word is. Just so we all remember what that T stands for, let's say it together. B before, B before, A after.